The NFL's free agent tagging period has begun. There hasn't been much action so far, and the Giants, quite frankly, don't necessarily have a bunch of highlight players who could be involved. But they still got a couple of starters they'll have to deal with in unrestricted free agency. We'll talk about their plans next on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino. So glad you could be with us once again tonight. Yesterday was the first day of the NFL's free agent tagging window, whereby teams could plant franchise tags or transition tags on their respective pending unrestricted free agents. Now, what we're going to do tonight, at least in the beginning, we're going to talk about the theme of free agency and the tags and the salary cap. There's been a lot of business stuff going around over the course of the last 48 hours in terms of the NFL. And obviously, we want to tie that into the Giants and how that may affect things for Big Blue. So that's how we're going to start things off. I invite your comments over in the chat. And of course, you could always call me up or do a video call through the link at the bottom of the screen if you so desire. Not sure exactly how long we're going to be doing this one tonight. It's not the hotbed of news that we might usually have on a given week. But hey, we want to be here every Wednesday for you, at least for the time being. And we're going to see what the response is, as always. And we'll take it in half-hour increments depending upon how you guys feel about the show. Aiden is on again tonight, one of our regulars. Says, good evening. Will there be a show next week while I am at the Combine? That is the plan, Aiden. As it stands now, yes, I am scheduled to be at the Combine for 4 days next week. And the plan at the moment is for me to do a Wednesday show live from Indianapolis, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And my goodness, that is a hotbed of information. Every year that I go there, I accumulate a tremendous amount of tidbits, and some of it I can certainly laugh at because rumors do fly, and some of those things, it's like flying horses. They truly don't exist, and you have to kind of sort through those. But then again, there's also a lot of really good information there, specifically about trends and what NFL people are thinking and what the consensus is for a lot of different topics regarding free agency and the draft. So yes, the hope is that I'll be back here again next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, to do a Combine show. All right, first things first, let's get to what happened earlier today, because this is a big deal. The NFL salary cap was expected to be about $272 million in 2025. That was the preliminary projection. If you didn't catch it, today it was announced that the salary cap is actually going to be somewhere between 277 and 281. So anywhere between $5 and $9 million more than it was expected to be. Revenues are up. Let's face it, the National Football League is truly America's game. There's no question about that. So what does this mean? Well, the Giants were projected to have somewhere around 41, 42, maybe 43 million in salary cap space under the initial projection for the NFL's salary cap in 2025. Well, tack on approximately 5 to 10 mil, right? Depends on exactly where it lands. We still don't know yet. All of the lawyers and accountants haven't done the specific to the penny calculations about the league's finances for this past calendar year. But now what we know is when they get there, it's going to be a little bit higher than the initial projection. So figure the Giants to have, instead of about 41 to 43 mil, probably between 45 and 50 mil of salary cap space for free agency in 2025. So think of it that way as you ponder, if you will, the type of free agents that the Giants would like to potentially acquire, or for that matter, even make a trade, right? And then have to absorb somebody's contract under the salary cap. Now, here are some numbers, all right? Because Taggy Day has begun, and we know that superstar wide receiver Tay Higgins, who, you know, since he came out of Clemson, we all knew he was going to be a superstar. Well, Higgins has been told by the Cincinnati Bengals that he is getting slapped with a franchise tag. Now, the franchise tag is going to hit him for a one-year deal at about $26 million for the 2025 season. And this will allow them to keep Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Higgins together as their version of the triplets. Makes perfect sense if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the other big name that is getting a lot of traction in terms of a potential tag is Minnesota Vikings quarterback Sam Darnold. Now, the tagging number for a quarterback is a little bit over $42 million. You know, I don't know. I've never been big on Sam Darnold, and I know that for about 2/3 of this season, he played really well and probably is deserving of that number based on those isolated performances. Then again, there was about a third of the season, especially the last couple of games of the Vikings campaign, and, you know, he wasn't very good. He was more like the guy who saw ghosts. So, you know, the Vikings have a really difficult decision to make as to what they do with Darnold. They could, of course, offer him a transition tag, or not offer, but slap it on him. The player doesn't get to say any say in any of this. If they put the transition tag on him, then that would be only $36 million or so. Now, what's the difference? All right, folks, I want to just make sure that everybody is on the same page here and has an understanding of this, because a lot of folks still don't know exactly what the tags mean. Now, here's the deal, okay? Franchise tag. It's called the non-exclusive franchise tag because that allows the player to at least go out and talk about getting an offer from other teams. It would allow his current team 5 days to match any offer he gets on the street or receive 2 first-round picks from the new team as compensation. Basically, it becomes a trade. Your superstar for 2 first-round picks. Really is what it turns into. Okay? Now, if the player winds up just signing the 1-year franchise tag, he gets a salary, 1-year salary. And to make it simple, there are a few other details in this, but I'm going to make it simple for you. The average of the top 5 salaries at his position in 2024, they'll average that out and they get the approximate number. That becomes his 1-year salary for this year, unless 120% of his 2024 salary is higher than that tag number. The player gets whichever number is higher for 1 year. Okay? Of course, that's a full salary cap charge, though, to the team, which is why sometimes teams are squeamish about putting a tag on a player, because it ties them up with a big salary cap number, and they can't fiddle around by lowering a cap number and spreading out the cap charge over extra years of the deal. So the positive is that the player gets a big chunk of money, and that's really, really nice. The positive is that the team gets to hold on to the player for a year. That's really, really nice. The negative is that the team gets saddled with a big 1-year cap charge. And the negative for the player is that he does not have any long-term security. Okay? That's how it works. The transition tag is a little bit different. Same situation in that you transition the player. He now gets a 1-year salary, average of the top 10 salaries at his position. Okay? He has the right to go out and field offers. His former team has the right to match. If they don't match, the player goes free and clear to the new team. And there is no compensation. It does not become a trade. He basically just flies away as an unrestricted free agent, is what it amounts to. Okay? So that's the difference between the franchise tag and the transition tag. Now, there is one caveat here. There is a third tag called the exclusive franchise tag, which very, very, very rarely gets used. And the reason is because what that does, okay, you tie up the player, he can't talk to any other team, and that's it. So there's no decisions to be made by anybody. Either the player signs the tag by July 15th and he's your property for a year under the same salary parameters that the original franchise tag has, okay? Or you negotiate a long-term deal before the 15th. Bottom line is, though, he is not able to talk to any other teams to field a market value. Okay? That's the way it works. That's the exclusive franchise tag. That does not get used very often. Teams are more than willing to tell a player, go ahead, we're going to franchise tag you. Go ahead, see what kind of offers you can get. And if we don't want to match, we'll gladly take those 2 first-round picks in a trade. That's why that's the one that's used much more often. Okay? For example, last year, 9 players were tagged, 8 with the non-exclusive franchise tag, 1 with the transition tag. Okay? Just to give you an idea of how this works, folks, because you don't see a lot of players get caught in this web. New England Patriots defensive back Kyle Duggar was the only transition tag. All right? There were 8 players who got franchised. Duggar got transitioned. Of the 9 players who were tagged, 6 of them wound up signing multi-year contract extensions with their current team. And that's kind of what the tag usually becomes. It's a mechanism to force people to the bargaining table so that they can try to hammer something out. The 3 players last year who got tagged, okay, who did not stay with their team, Carolina edge rusher Brian Burns, okay, he was a tag who then got traded to the Giants. L'Jarius Sneed, Kansas City Chiefs corner, he was a franchise tag and got traded to the Titans. And who else? Oh, that's right. T. Higgins. T. Higgins played under the franchise tag this past year. Now, with Higgins, that 120% salary boost is going to come into play because he's already been tagged once. They can tag him a second time and give him 120% boost off of his previous salary from this past season, which I think was something like $21 million. So that gives you an idea of the landscape of how this situation works with franchise tags and transition tags. Now, as far as the Giants go, I want to make sure you guys know this too. The Giants are in a position where they don't have high-profile free agents that are going to be involved in the tags. Okay, it's just not the case. The two highest profile unrestricted free agent players on the Giants are wide receiver Darius Slayton and safety Jason Pinnock. It would be incredibly expensive for the Giants to put a tag on either one of those two guys because neither guy is a top 5 player in the league. So why would you even think about doing something like that? Slayton is not a top 10 player at wide receiver in the NFL. And to be honest, I like Jason Pinnock. I'm not sure if he really is a top 10 safety in the league. He's a good player. You know, if there are a total of 64 starting safeties in the NFL, is he one of the top 10 out of 64? I don't think that's the case. I do think he's better than average, which means if there are 64 safeties starting in the NFL, well, right? 32 and up is your top half. 32 would be average. I think he's there, probably somewhere between 10 and 32. But he's certainly not top 10. So I don't think the Giants are going to have any tags. The one player this past year who played every single snap was right guard Greg Van Roten. He is an unrestricted free agent. But again, you're not going to put a tag on him either. It's funny, Van Roten's 35 years old. Last year, he only made $2 million because, let's face it, he signed for a low veteran price. He's got family here. They're from Long Island. And basically, when he came in the Giants camp late because he was out on the street looking for a deal, he told us in his first news conference, I was being very selective. I still wanted to play. He knew Carmen Brasillo from their time together with the Las Vegas Raiders. And he also knew that because his family, he has roots at Long Island, that it would be really great if he could play close to home. So that was a very unique situation. Van Roten really wanted to be here. And the Giants really wanted to help upgrade their offensive line with a guy that Brasillo had faith in. And so that's how that marriage came to be. And it turned out Van Roten did not miss a snap the whole season. And you know what? He played pretty well. Again, we're not going to say he's one of the top 10 guards in the league. He's not. Right? That's not the case. There are 2 starting guards on every team, so there are 64 of those guys. Well, he's not in the top 10 out of 64, but I'd say, you know what? He probably played above average. So anyway, Van Roten's not going to get tagged, but that's an unrestricted free agent who the Giants certainly were happy to have in their starting lineup. Hey, just a couple of notes here we want to get to. Scott Young says, looking forward to the show. Thank you, Scott. Always love talking Giants with you. By all means, man, dial me up. Give me an audio call. Give me a video call. You know, I know a lot of people just want to stay on the chat, but I'm a talkative kind of guy. Ask 7 says, this 3-win organization trying to acquire 37-year-old Matthew Stafford is just stupid. Can they just acknowledge that this is a rebuild? Hopefully the Rams sign him and prevent further incompetence by the New York Giants. Ask 7, I couldn't disagree with you more. I think if the Giants are able to find a reasonable deal with Matt Stafford, I think they absolutely should pursue it. You saw what he did with the Rams this year, leading them to the playoffs, had a very fine season, played really well under horrible wintry conditions in Philadelphia in a game that the Eagles prevailed on. But to me, if the Giants can find a reasonable deal for Stafford, now remember something, 37-year-old Matt Ryan, who also had a very similar career and was still starting at 37, was dealt to the Indianapolis Colts a few years ago for a third round pick. And much like Stafford, the Falcons with Ryan were responsible for some dead money. Approximately, I believe, something like 25 million in dead money by making that trade. So strictly from a business perspective and an economic perspective, it would be a reasonable expectation to say, you know what? That's probably what you're looking at. I'm sure the Rams will want more. There are reports in various media organizations suggesting that the Rams want a number one for Matt Stafford. Well, again, I just gave you a business-like comparison of a third round pick for Matt Ryan. Ryan wound up only playing 1 year for the Colts before he retired and moved on to television. Okay? So here's what I would say. If the Giants could get him for a 3, I think that you would absolutely want to do it. Would you do it if it was a third that could be conditional to a second? If, Stafford meets certain standards, maybe you would consider that. Would you give up a 3 and then maybe like a 5 next year? Sweeten the pot a little bit and throw in something else in the 26th draft? Maybe you could do that too. As long as the deal was reasonable, I think Matt Stafford would be an outstanding addition for a team that's going to try to win as many games as they possibly can this year. And he clearly has a lot of gas left in his tank at age 37. And I think if you bring in a Matt Stafford, whoever does, they're looking at him as probably a 2-year starter with the possibility of being a 3-year starter. Now, the beauty of that, of course, is that Stafford, he knows he's on the back end of his career. So, from all indications with the Rams, he's been a stellar guy to deal with. He's very well liked and a pro's pro. So, that he would be willing to be a longer bridge. I'm sure it's, again, you don't bring him in. You don't make a trade for a guy like Stafford and then have to renegotiate his deal and give him a year or 2 extension. You don't do that if he's only a 1-year bridge. That's not what you do. If you're going to go to the trouble and the expense and the effort to bring a guy like Matt Stafford in, he's going to be your starter for 2 seasons with the possibility of starting a third. And I think there's that much juice left in that orange that I don't think that's unrealistic at all. And that basically buys you as an organization 1, 2, and perhaps 3 years to go shopping for a young, fresh out of the box quarterback who could then be groomed under Stafford and hopefully experience some winning, okay? And so that he could then wind up being put into the lineup at such time that you deem necessary. So I think, the difference between Stafford and some of the other guys, and, you guys know I'm a Jimmy G guy. I like Jimmy Garoppolo a lot, and I felt that was a low-risk bridge, being that I think he's only 34 years old, so he's on the younger side, and he would come as an unrestricted free agent to Team X, if you will, which meant you could get him for a very cheap price, and there's a lot of upside there. But if a guy like Matt Stafford is going to be available, if he cannot come to terms on a renegotiated deal with the Rams, he's making about $31 million, I believe, this year on his contract, and he wants to do better. You're going to have to extend him a year or 2 anyway to lower your cap number for the next 2 years with him. So you're going to have to extend him. If the Rams and him cannot come to terms and they decide they're going to put him on the trading block, well, that's like shopping for a whole nother deal, right? I mean, instead of shopping for a hamburger, you're now shopping for a steak. So with the climate and the conditions around the available quarterback market changing, I must say, as much as I like Jimmy G, if you can now go shopping for a steak instead of for a hamburger, I think if you're the Giants, you do it. You do it. So I'm on the opposite end of Ask Seven here. I'm sorry. I'm not with him at all. I do think that that is the right way to go because you get a guy who's a pro, who has won a lot, who would be an outstanding mentor as a bridge for the young folks that you might want to consider bringing in over the course of the next year, 2 or 3. And at the same time, Matt Stafford gives you instant credibility with the opportunity to compete right away and win some more games. So there's no doubt that I think Matt Stafford would be a tremendous asset for somebody who's looking for a bridge quarterback. Iman Perry says, salute there. Hey, how are you, my man? Good to talk to you once again. Another fellow who has been with us many, many times. Gary Gaston says, Paulie Dots, how do you feel about your quarterback making rap videos? Sanders made one. I can't have my quarterback do that. I have absolutely no opinion about videos at all. I no longer watch videos like I did when I was a teenager growing up. MTV's not the same as it used to be. Neither is VH1. So I have nothing to do with music videos at all. And whether or not in his spare time he decides he wants to make one, hey, to each his own, right? Do you remember Gary? And I don't know if you do, but do you remember the New York Football Giants back in '86? We are the New York Giants. Yeah, we know we're great. Football is our business. Pasadena, we can't wait. Do you remember that one? That was in the old Giants Stadium. And they made a music video one day after practice. Mean Gene Okerlund actually introduced the music video. That's, in those days, pro wrestling was a lot different than it is now, and it was gaining tremendous popularity. And he actually introed the Giants team in that video. And that was their march. It was a takeoff, basically, because in '85, the Chicago Bears had the Super Bowl shuffle, right? And they won the championship. And so some video company thought, well, let's see if we can get the Giants to do a video. I don't think Bill Parcells was real thrilled about it, but it was after practice one day. The guys were in their street clothes already. They were going to get ready to leave and pull out of the parking lot. And he's like, oh, well, go ahead, fellas, just do it. And it was all done in good fun. It wasn't a very cocky or arrogant video in any way. It was actually not the greatest tune in the world either, to be honest. But in any event, so the Giants did make a video of their own on their way to winning Super Bowl 21 back in 1986. So, I mean, video, schmidio, whatever. I mean, who cares? Who cares? I do think that between the two consensus top quarterbacks in this draft, there's no question in my mind that Cam Ward would be the fellow who I would pick. I think there's a lot more upside there. And I also think there's a lot more pure physical talent in Cam Ward than there is Sanders. But that's strictly a personal opinion. I have no idea what Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen think, even if they've made their up an opinion at this point. They may not even have one. Remember, the combine's coming up next week. So they may not even have a conclusive opinion as to which one is higher on their board. But for me, as someone who has now been cramming, trying to prepare for this stuff, I don't think there's any doubt. If I was forced to take a quarterback high in the first round at 3, it would be Cam Ward over Sanders for me. Okay, Mikey C says, I'm on the train for Joe Milton as the potential quarterback, and I'm with Stafford for a third-round pick in 2026. Well, look, Mike, as I've been saying all along, it's been very obvious to me. And here's what I don't understand. And Mikey C, by the way, says only a 2026 third-round pick for Stafford, nothing else. He even says Iman says, what do you got against rap? I got nothing against rap, Iman. Iman, I have nothing against rap at all. Look, I'm a Springsteen guy. I'm a Sinatra guy. I'm a Dean Martin guy. I'm a Johnny Maestro and the Brooklyn Bridge guy, right? Uh, I love Johnny Cash. Huge Elvis Presley fan. I got a very eclectic taste for music. I don't have really anything against any music. I'm the pop, the soft rock, the rockabilly, the country, whatever. Heck, my man, I remember when Saturday Night Fever came out, and I was like, disco? Really? What's that all about? The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Tell me, is there a person out there who, if they listen to the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, is there a person out there who doesn't start humming and singing that tune in their heads and doesn't start moving a little bit in their chair? Is it possible? I mean, I remember growing up, it was like you were either onto disco or you hated disco with a passion. It was like, oh, it's disco. But you all got to admit it. That Saturday Night Fever soundtrack plays. You know the words. You know the music. You can't help but sing it in your head, and you can't help but move. Oh, Iman says he was talking to Gary Gaston. Okay, well, thank you. Because I certainly have nothing against anybody's music. I really don't. Like I said, I've got such a widespread taste in music. It's ridiculous. Aiden Fink says, Paul, what are your thoughts on the Kendrick Lamar halftime show from the Super Bowl while we're on the topic of music? Aiden, I didn't watch it. Honestly, halftime for me, because I'm so ingrained and paying attention to the plays, I very, very rarely, unless like when Springsteen played, okay? Bruno Mars played. I watched that. I watched, obviously, when I was at all 5 of the Giants Super Bowls and the one that was at MetLife between Denver and Seattle, Bruno Mars was at that one. I saw that one. I very rarely watch the halftime show of the Super Bowl. I'm a football guy. I'm not into the pop and circumstance stuff. Halftime is a good chance for me to take a break, deal with whatever I got to deal with, prepare more food, go get something to drink, maybe make a phone call or two to somebody to talk about what I saw in the first half. I don't pay attention to the halftime show. Sponsors out there, I know you spend a lot of money on the halftime show, but you're not getting me because I don't pay much attention to it. I'm sorry, I just don't. I'm being honest with you guys. All right, what do we got here? Let me see what else I got. The Big Moo says he's checking in. Why would Stafford want to come to the Giants? End of his career, come to the Giants doesn't make sense to me. Grab Fields and Travis Hunter and the best available quarterback in the second. Okay, I'm with you on Travis Hunter. I'm with you on the best available quarterback in the second. I'm not with you on Fields. Does not have enough of winning experience for me. And I also think that Justin Fields believes he's got many years of starting quarterback play in him. I don't think he goes to a team that's looking at him as a 1, 2, or even 3-year bridge. I think he goes to a team, if he is set free and the Steelers decide not to bring him back, he goes to a team where he's basically being told, you're the starter. You're not going to mentor somebody. You're not going to be a bridge. We're going to give you the starting job. That's where Justin Fields wants to go. I don't think he's interested in having a young guy in the locker room to kind of shadow him and potentially be groomed into being the next starter for an organization. So I don't think Justin Fields fits at all. I'm sorry, but that's literally, to me, that's exactly what you don't want to do, is bring in a guy who truly believes that, he's the next franchise quarterback. No. I don't think that's a good situation. And also, he's had very little positive experience in the league. Look, here's what I'm going to tell you. There are 41 unrestricted free agent quarterbacks, according to Over the Cap, that are going to be available in the marketplace. 14 of the 41 have started a playoff game. Okay? 6 of the 41 have actually won at least one playoff game as a starting quarterback. 3 have started a game in a Super Bowl. 2 have actually won a Super Bowl as a starting quarterback. Those 3 being Joe Flacco, Jimmy G, and Russell Wilson. Obviously, Matt Stafford is a potential trade quarterback. He's not on this list. I do believe Matthew Stafford, to me, if he does become available in the marketplace, is easily the number one quarterback at the top of the mountain that you could get your hands on if he becomes available. Okay? So my thinking is, if you're going to go after one of these pending free agent quarterbacks, first thing you want to do is just narrow the list down immediately. And you want to look at guys who have been a playoff starter. I think that experience is incredibly important. It means an awful lot. I would further prefer, although it's not mandatory, but I would further prefer that you narrow it down to somebody who's actually quarterbacked a winning playoff game. Again, there's experience there that becomes knowledge and becomes something very important as you try to mentor the potential next guy who's sitting behind you as a redshirt. Now, one of the very few guys on this list who did not win a playoff game is Andy Dalton, who is 38 years old. You can get him for just the price of free agency without having to make a trade for anybody. Dalton is a guy I would consider if the Giants don't wind up making a trade and go strictly the free agent route. Jimmy G would still be my first selection. But Andy Dalton would be somebody that I would absolutely put on that shelf of somebody who I would look at and say, he checks a lot of boxes for me. He's certainly a guy who's going to understand what being a bridge quarterback means. He knows what it means to now be a backup in his career. So any chance to start, he's going to welcome. He's going to understand how to mentor a young QB. I still believe he's got some gas left in his tank. So, Andy Dalton's not a bad choice if you're forced to just go to the pending free agent list. I still don't think I would take him over Jimmy G. But Dalton is not a bad guy to think about. Russell Wilson is not a bad guy to think about either. He's also on that shelf, and that guy's actually won a Super Bowl. So, anyway. All right, let's see what else we could talk about here. So anyway, I appreciate it, the Big Moo. I think you got 2/3 of your opinion right there. At least if I were running, as a GM of a team. I'm with you on Travis Hunter, and I'm with you on best available quarterback in the second round. I'm just not with you on Joe Fields. Justin Fields. Sorry. Joe Fields used to play center for the Jets, and then at the end of his career came to the Giants and played center for the Giants. Joe Fields, Justin Fields, not the same guy. Oh, man, sometimes the years get very, very convoluted when you've been doing this as long as I have. Let's see, what else do we have? Timothy Minays, one of our regulars. And by the way, Iman Perry says Shadira is perfect for the New York media. He can handle this environment. Well, again, I'm telling you, my man, it's not even about that. It's about looking at the tape. He does not, in my opinion, have as exciting a skill set as Cam Ward, and therefore does not have the upside that Cam Ward has. If it's between the two of those two, Ward over Sanders 7 days out of 7 days for me. Okay, Timothy, what do you got? Paul, we need to build the lines, in my opinion. I'm sure that's what he means instead of option. We should go after Abdul Carter in the draft and sign Aaron Banks. Dable said after the Colts game that we just need good quarterback play. No good lines, no good quarterback play. Timothy, I would never dispute building the trenches. Do you know anything about me? Do you know how much I love the trenches? Football 101, it always starts in the trenches. And when I got on that campaign after the Giants won their last Super Bowl in 2011, and I was banging the drums that the Giants need to fortify the trenches because this line is starting to get a little long in the tooth and it's getting a little cracked, most of the public screamed at me. They wanted skill position players. Fellow media wanted skill position players, and I'm screaming for trenches. It took a bunch of years for people finally to understand and see the light. But yes, now everybody seems to understand that you do need to build the trenches first. It's okay. I get it. It took a while, but everybody's now on board. Make sure you take care of the trenches. Now, interesting. Let me see if I have my chart available. I got something for you, my friend. Timothy, hang with me right here because I have a chart specifically regarding the trenches. And it's pretty cool. Let me see if I can pull this thing up. Abdul Carter is absolute blue chip, no questions asked. Consensus is he's going to be dynamite. I don't see him getting to the Giants. I just don't. It's possible that the quarterbacks go 1-2. Do we really think Tennessee and Cleveland, the two teams ahead of the Giants, are going to go quarterback? I don't think so because it's clear that Ward and Sanders are not the best players available unless these teams are so desperate that they just jump. But I don't think it's going to happen, which means that Carter's going to be one of those first two picks in all likelihood because of the itch for pass rushers. And I totally understand that. And it's okay. Let me see. I don't believe. Let me see if I can find my list here of what I got. I got something for you. Here we go. Here it is. It's on this machine. Timothy, just as a matter of information, and I think this is really cool, and this is why I'm going to actually take a second to give this to you guys. It's a chart that I constructed just the other day talking about edge rushers, okay? There have been 18 edge rushers taken with the top 3 picks in the NFL draft since the year 2000, okay? I made it simple. I just cut it off right at the 2000 season, 2000 draft. 18 edge rushers have been taken with either the first, second, or third overall picks since 2000. 11 of the 18, or 61%, have gone to at least one Pro Bowl. Pretty good number. 5 of the 18 have made at least one All-Pro team. So the list is pretty strong. And just to give you an idea, guys who were taken number 1 overall: Travon Walker, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Mario Williams, and Courtney Brown. Walker and Brown, the 2 guys who did not make a Pro Bowl. Walker, however, has already posted double-digit sacks in the season, so quality player. Courtney Brown, he turned out to be a bust out of Penn State. So 1 out of the 5 was a bust. But 4 out of the 5 quality players that I know those teams are very happy with. Number 2 overall pick edge rushers taken: Aiden Hutchinson, Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Von Miller, Chris Long, Julius Peppers, LeVar Arrington. The only one of those guys who did not make a Pro Bowl was Chris Long. He lasted in the league for a number of years, was a solid player, no question. He never got to a Pro Bowl, though. Bosa, Miller, and Peppers all made all-pro teams. So that's 3, 6, 7. 7 edge rushers since 2000 were taken with the number 2 overall pick in the draft, and only one of them did not make a Pro Bowl. With the number 3 pick in the draft since 2000, the following edge rushers were selected: Solomon Thomas, Joey Bosa, Dante Fowler, Deion Jordan, and Tyson Jackson. Well, Will Anderson done a nice job out of Alabama for the Texans, has already gone to a Pro Bowl. We know what Joey Bosa has done for the Chargers out of Ohio State. Been banged up a bit, but he's gone to Pro Bowls. Solomon Thomas was a good player for the 49ers. He's changed positions some as he's bounced around with his versatility. Been a good player now for the Jets for the last few years, of course. Been a good player, but didn't live up to the number 3 pick. Hasn't gone to a Pro Bowl. Dante Fowler has had flashes of good seasons, but basically been inconsistent and up and down. I think he's had a couple of double-digit sack years, but not consistent at all. Been very up and down. Good player, but value at number 3, I'd say underachieved. Deion Jordan and Tyson Jackson, we won't even talk about those 2 guys. Obviously, they did not live up to their hype as a 3rd overall pick in the draft. But again, 11 out of 18 have gone to at least one Pro Bowl. So you can make a very strong case, if you will, especially with Carter being such a blue chip prospect, to make a pitch for Abdul Carter. But I don't think he's getting to 3. I just don't, Timothy. Now, it's funny you mention Aaron Banks. Unrestricted free agent from the San Francisco 49ers out of Notre Dame. I was very high on him coming out of school. I thought perhaps even 3rd round value, maybe 4th round value. And to be frank, he's been a solid player, but after 4 years and being a 2nd round pick, the Niners, I want to see what the valuation is on him. Aaron Banks, according to Over the Cap, Aaron Banks has a valuation on him of a little over $4 million. I'm sure he's going to get more than that. I thought he'd be an awesome 3rd round pick for the Giants when he came out. But in 2021, the Niners snagged him in the 2nd round. Probably he's underachieved a little bit. I think for a 2nd round pick, you'd like to have a little bit more. But he's a good player. He's a good player. I do like him. And I just don't know what his price is going to be in free agency. But I certainly wouldn't sneeze at him. Okay? I would not sneeze at him at all if they picked him up, Timothy. This is a guy I liked, again, since he was coming out of Notre Dame. So, not a problem. Hey, Tuto! Tuto is back with us once again. Thanks so much, Tuto. Tuto and the Italian rugby team. These guys are awesome. Tuto is a super user who always comes by on Wednesday night to enjoy some New York Giants talk, and we appreciate him very much from across the pond. So thank you, Tuto. Thank you very, very much. Very generous of you. All right. So, Timothy, in concept, I'm with you. Yes, the Giants do need to enhance their offensive line. I would not object at all to Aaron Banks, although I wonder if they aren't better off taking like a draft pick, whether it's a third or a fourth round pick, and getting just a young guy in and letting Carmen Brasillo work his magic and try to develop a guy who is going to be really cheap and can be worked into the lineup, as opposed to if you sign an Aaron Banks, you're basically signing him not only for higher money, but you're telling him he's going to be a starter right away. Again, I wouldn't object to it, but you also have some other needs to fill, and you are going to need some of that cash if you make a trade for a veteran quarterback. Okay, you're going to need some cash too. So, but Timothy, I'm with you in thought, in terms of philosophy. I like what you're saying. I'm taking Travis Hunter at 3 because I don't think there's any way Carter gets by the first two teams. I just don't. Then again, it's entirely possible that Hunter doesn't get past the first two teams either. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here? Isaac Moore, one of our regulars, says, what's up? I think we need Russell Wilson and Shedeur Sanders. I think that's the perfect scenario. They're very similar quarterbacks. Well, we've discussed Russell Wilson, a guy who made a pit stop on his free agent visit before he went to Pittsburgh, stopped in on the Giants last year. I don't think he's got as much gas left in his tank as Matthew Stafford does, but I do think that Russell Wilson is on the shelf of guys that I would consider shopping for. Let me say that. I absolutely believe that. As far as Sanders, you already know my feelings there. And of course, Isaac says hi to everybody. Always cool. Aiden says Dalton got re-signed by Carolina. All right, hold on a second. Let me take a look at that. When did that happen, Aiden? He did. Yesterday. My apologies. Andy Dalton re-signed a 2-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. So let me say yes, Aiden. We'll type this in the chat for you. So Andy Dalton got a 2-year deal to stay with the Panthers. So he is off the shelf of free agents. There you go. Aiden, good call. I don't know why I didn't see that, but I appreciate it very much. I'm too busy dealing with caps and free agency with the tags and stuff that I totally missed that. Yep, so that's a shame. I mean, it's a shame that he's not available to a team that could use him, but good for him that he got a deal. Okay. Sue Baiguru also mentioning the same thing. All right. Isaac Moore says, what do you think of Cooper Rush? Ironically, if you recall, Cooper Rush had a pit stop with the Giants a few years ago after he got cut by Dallas and then went back to Dallas. I don't really think that's a very viable solution. Gary Gaston says, Paul, I'm with you about this class. I'll take Stafford and draft Hunter or trade down for a ransom. I've said that many, many, many times. You know, if you can trade down from 3 to 6 for a ransom, if you can hold, let's say, the Raiders hostage, absolutely. I would not be against that whatsoever. Okay. Gary says, I love rap, Emery. I rap myself, actually. I live in the Bronx, home of hip-hop. I just don't want my quarterback face of my franchise doing that. All right. Let's see what else. Gary makes sure he's got E-Man's correct. He's got his name right. That's very cool. Okay. Isaac says, I like Stafford, just don't think his price is worth it right now. And that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Oh, Tudo says, please, everyone in the building, fasten your seatbelts and get ready. Saturday, February 23rd at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. It's Italy against France. We're good at making burnt French toast extra burnt, says Tudo. There you go. Paisan. Ho-ho! There you go. So they're going to take it to France on Saturday the 23rd. And there again is Tudo with another thank you again, Tudo. And go Italy. There you go. Tudo, appreciate your generosity as always. Thank you so much to you and the team over there. We wish you all the best of luck in your game, for sure. Isaac says crispy French fries. By the way, was it Will Fries, the offensive lineman, the guard for the Indianapolis Colts, is one of the better free agent guards who's available, or pending free agent guards who will be available in the marketplace if you're interested in an offensive lineman. Let's see. Isaac Moore says, yeah, Cooper Rush, the other red rifle. Yeah, okay. All right. There you go. Hey, Isaac, this is what I've been saying for a while now. If the Raiders want Shedeur Sanders, and he has been connected to them a number of times, and he's there at 3, they will trade us. Want to ring the phone? You want to make a deal? Let's talk. Get the phone. We'll take the call. I'm ready. I'm ready, Raiders. Here. Come make the phone call. I got no problem moving down to 6, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you real good. I want a 1 in 2026, and I want your 2 in 2026. I might settle for a 3 and make it a conditional 2, but it's going to cost you. For me to move out at 3, and potentially, again, let me see if Travis Hunter is there or Carter is there. I don't think Carter will be. Better chance Hunter's going to be there. If Hunter's there, you got to give me a 1 and a 2 for me to move down off of Hunter. If I can't get that out of you, then we're hanging up the phone and I'm taking Travis Hunter. It's that simple. All right. All right, there we go. So we're all caught up right now with the chats. We're an hour into the program. We'll see if we can go another half hour with you. In the meantime, let me go back to what I was talking about earlier. We told you about the cap space issue with the Giants. We told you about the tagging issue, the 2 premier names. Higgins has already been told by the Bengals he's getting tagged. Darnold is still in limbo. We don't know how that's going to go. We've told you that the Giants' top names are Jason Pinnock. He's not going to get tagged. Darius Slayton. He's not going to get tagged. All right, so that's where we're at. Timothy says, hey, Paul, with a few staffing changes made this offseason, who are some free agents to keep an eye on that could make their way to Big Blue? Timothy, I think the problem we're dealing with here is that we don't know enough about these new people and their relationships. Now, we know some of the places they've come from. Let me give you an example. And I know you've read it. It's blown up all over the internet. The Giants added the assistant quarterbacks coach, Coach Hill, I believe, was named to the Giants assistant coaching staff. Okay, he is going to be the assistant quarterbacks coach. Okay, he is the brother-in-law of Matthew Stafford. Okay, Chad Hall. I apologize, not Hill. Hall. I haven't met him yet. Okay, he's busy doing what he's doing. I've been busy doing shows, the Big Blue Kickoff Show during the day. I have not met him. So here's the thing. I've not met Chad Hall. I have not talked to him. I don't know. Just because he's the brother of Matthew Stafford's wife does not necessarily mean the Giants have an inside track on acquiring the player if he should be put out on the trade market. Okay? Now, Hall was also a wide receivers coach in Buffalo, which is where he knows Schoen and Dabble from. So it stands to reason they like him a lot. It also stands to reason that they probably think along the same lines. If you really want to extend yourself, and I don't want to cause any kind of stir here, but there is a pending unrestricted free agent wide receiver who Hall coached in Buffalo named Stefon Diggs. Diggs is coming off a serious ACL injury with the Houston Texans. There are some people who think they might consider tagging him. I don't think that's going to happen. There's a connection there. If that's what you're talking about, Timothy, where an assistant coach may have had a connection to a big name player in the past, there's a connection for you. Hall was a wide receivers coach in Buffalo when Stefon Diggs was there. Does that mean there's any interest? It does not. Does that mean they're going to get him? It does not. It simply means that there's a guy on the staff who knows him. But you know what? Schoen and Dabble also know him too. So now there's 3 people on the Giants staff who know Stefon Diggs. Does that mean any more than having 2 people on the staff that know him? Probably not. But that's, I suppose, that's kind of what you're talking about. Let me see here. What else do we have? Trying to think, is there anybody else offhand, just off the cuff, that I can think of who who may have a connection to a big name free agent? Offhand, I'll be honest with you, Timothy, I really don't know of anybody else. Those 2 names immediately came to mind because of Hall's background. I mean, I guess we could look at it for a second here. Let me see. Who else may have? Let's take a look here. I'll take a look at it with you while we're actually talking right now. Okay, let's see. Stephen Ferentz, obviously we know he came from has the background with his dad from Iowa. Troy Brown was a former wide receiver with the New England Patriots for a while. Marquard Manuel, Jeff Burris. I haven't matched any of these guys up doing connecting the dots to see if they belong with any superstar names. Hall was the one who obviously immediately came to mind because of the 2 players where he was, and the Giants actually have a need at those 2 positions. So that's the only one that I really, that immediately hit my mind when he got hired, obviously. And then the internet blew up with that too. But it doesn't really mean anything. All right, Isaac Moore again says, it stinks that the top wide receivers in free agency will make 20+ mil. We might have to settle for a mid-tier. Isaac also says Hall also coached in Buffalo, I believe. Well, you're absolutely right. We just talked about that. He says Diggs is a complainer. I don't know. He has been known to say things. Asking, do you think, Isaac says, you think Cooper Kupp would be a good fit? Well, now that's interesting, right? The Rams have already made it public that they've given Cooper Kupp permission to seek a trade. What do you think they could get for Cooper Kupp? Now, there's been no conversations or no reports anywhere about a potential landing spot for him or a price. I think that's pretty interesting. Kupp is a little bit on in years. But here's what I would say, Isaac. If the Los Angeles Rams wind up trading Matthew Stafford, I think it's likely, if they can't get a deal for Kupp, and I don't think they will, unless they sell him dirt cheap and somebody's willing to take him, because they'd have to absorb the contract, right? They'll be forced to cut him. I think Kupp would probably be on the phone with the team that lands Matthew Stafford in a trade and see if he can reunite with Stafford, if Stafford winds up getting dealt from the Rams. I think you can connect those dots very, 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 very easily. Now, let me take a look here. Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp he's got a cap number this year of 29.7. It is highly unlikely, okay? The Rams already told him they can't keep him at that number, and so they're looking to deal him. Well, if they trade him, the new team is going to have to take up a $12.5 million base salary, okay? And depending upon when the deal is made, they may have to be stuck with a roster bonus of 7.5. So that means Cooper Kupp would cost the new team $20 million. I don't think at 32 years old, you're going to get too many takers for Kupp in a trade. I think what people are going to do is wait out the Rams, let them sweat it out, and then cut the player. If they cut Kupp before June 1st, they're going to get hit with $22 million in dead money, but they're going to save $7.5 million from the salary they would have paid him. Or if they make him a post-June 1st cut, they could spread out that money over 2 years and save $15 million on this year's salary cap. So you see, I think Cooper Kupp is more than likely not going to be traded, but get cut and thereby be a street free agent, and he'll be able to sign anywhere. I do think his first phone call is going to be wherever Matthew Stafford is playing, if Stafford is not playing for the Rams. And Isaac, I mean, that's about as obvious and as plain as I can discuss that topic. CL says, who's your prediction to be the future quarterback? I'm sure he's talking about the Giants. If it were me, I would try to see if I could work out a deal for Matthew Stafford. For now. Again, with the thought that he's going to QB for 2 to maybe 3 years. And then I would see about drafting a youngster who could redshirt behind him. That's what I would do. I would not rule out Russell Wilson as a pending free agent as somebody who could definitely come in here as well. I think right now, those are the two names that I think probably make the most sense if you're going to the higher tier of players. Again, if you're going back to the mid-tier and looking for really good value without spending a lot, I think Jimmy G makes the most sense for me. But if you're going to accelerate to the higher tier and be willing to go more in terms of your expenses, I think Stafford and Wilson are the two guys who make the most sense. Jason Benjamin, thank you so much. Jason also coming in as a super user. Appreciate that very much. And he says, Kupp, Diggs, just re-signed Slayton. He knows the system. Well, I happen to be a big Darius Slayton fan. He's a great teammate. He's a pro's pro. We have seen him go through a lot of adversity. We have seen him even come out of the doghouse. He has been a terrific mentor to Malik Neighbors. I'm a Darius Slayton guy. Here's the problem. I think Slayton is going to get some really good money to go somewhere where they have a better, more emphasis on a deep passing game, where they have a lot better weather to execute that type of passing game, or maybe even a dome team that has the ability to do a lot of deep balls. And I think Slayton's going to be paid handsomely to do that. I think he's going to get wooed away by a situation that better suits a deep threat receiver and also is going to pay him a nice chunk of change. So as much as I personally would like to see Darius Slayton return, I suspect it's not in the cards. Okay. Isaac says, mid-tier wide receivers you would look at. Okay. The list, I don't necessarily know that I'm enamored with the list of receivers. I mean, I'm looking at it now. There's a bunch of guys over 30 years old on the list. And I honestly don't know what the marketplace is going to hold. I wouldn't mind if the Giants went out and got themselves a mid-tier receiver. I wouldn't mind if they did. At the same time, I wouldn't mind if they went and drafted somebody, particularly a skyscraper. And there's a lot of 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" receivers in this draft who have like a make it grade. I might just say, you know what? Go get an insurance policy receiver for not that much on the free agent market, and see if you can grab somebody in the draft, because there's a lot of guys in the draft that could really help the room. Tyler Boyd is one guy, to be frank, who I've always liked. Let me see what his perceived number would be based on over the cap's valuation. I'm a big Tyler Boyd fan. Nope, they don't think he's very expensive. Over the cap valuation's a little over $4 million. It's not a lot. He's been so durable. He's got terrific hands. He's had some really fine seasons and seems to be kind of, on the outs in Tennessee. Tyler Boyd would be a guy I would think perhaps that I might consider. All right. Isaac Moore says also, I don't think they'll re-sign Slayton. Says, need to take pressure off Neighbors. Wan'Dale's yak is terrible, worse than the league, and Hyatt is missing in action. Yeah, the Giants have a lot of trouble with yak yardage, and a lot of factors go into that. A lot. Some of it is on the receivers themselves, whether they're not running the right routes, or they're not breaking free, with their skill set like they're supposed to. Some of it's on the ball placement. Some of it's on the timing of the passes. Some of it is on the scheme. Some of it is on the defensive backs being able to cheat and position themselves in better position because maybe they don't have enough respect for the Giants' overall ability on offense. There's a lot of reasons why. But the Giants, yak yardage is substandard, to say the least. That has to change if they're going to get better. It has to. There is no debate about this. The Giants have to be a better yak yardage team. So yes, let me think about this a second. I have got a list here, some of the receivers I was looking at in the draft. I'd love to get a speed guy. You know, I'd love to get a speed guy, but quite frankly, I'm more interested in a skyscraper. And there are a bunch of those guys, in this draft. I mean, there was a slew of them at the Senior Bowl. Man, Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. If you watch the Senior Bowl practices, and you got to look at the Senior Bowl when the game was played, it's hard not to like him. Very, very hard not to like him. 6'4", 217. Woo! He's not going to be a first rounder either. So, you'll get him later on. But anyway, so yes, I would very much like to see the Giants add a receiver, but specifically, I'd like to see them get a skyscraping receiver. We know Neighbors has juke ability, and we know he's got speed. We know Wan'Dale Robinson has juke ability and speed. We know Hyatt has speed. So how about, getting a skyscraper? Now, skyscraper with speed, those are very, very hard to come by. So, and again, we're not, if I'm Team X, I'm not using given the needs that the Giants have, I'm not going to draft. Isaac Moore says, is Akeem Nicks and Plexico Burris available? Yeah, exactly. Plexico Burris is exactly what the Giants need. Okay? He's exactly what they need. But, what are you going to do? Aiden Fink says, the speculation that Tyler Lockett's career may be over in Seattle. Thoughts on signing Lockett? Well, let me see here. What is Lockett's what's Lockett's number here in terms of estimated money that's going to take to bring him in somewhere? Lockett. Valuation on over the cap, $8.5 million. He's been very productive. There's no question about his productivity. I always liked him as a player. Absolutely always liked him as a player. He's got some elusiveness. He's got hands. Really good player. Thing is, though, my friend, here's the problem, Aiden. I'd like to see them add more of a skyscraper to the room. And Lockett's another sub 6 foot guy. He's another sub 6 foot guy. And I just think I got, that wide receiver room has enough of guys who are under 6 feet. I mentioned Tyler Boyd for you before because he's 6'2". He's got some height to him. I need some stories on that building. I need an attic. Isaac Mars comes back and says, I like Lockett. He's savvy. Yeah, he is. I don't deny that he's a good player. Tyler Lockett has been durable. He's been productive. He's played on winning teams. He's been clutch. He's a really solid player. I don't know that he would fit in my wide receiver room at the moment. Again, I like to get a skyscraper in there. Now, here's the interesting part, right? Bryce Ford Wheaton had his 1 year back from the torn ACL. was a gunner last year on special teams. How much will they be willing to do to give him maybe a role in the receiving corps? Because he has size and he has length. And it looks like, based on his special teams work last year, he got a lot of his speed back. It's probably a reach to say that he becomes an important part of the receiving corps. That's probably a reach. But I don't want to forget about him because he did so well on special teams last year, and the Giants kept him around after the torn ACL, saw what he did on specials, enough that they cut Nick McLeod. And so Bryce Ford Wheaton, I'd like to see him get more of a chance on offense this season, to be quite frank with you. Unless they feel as though, you know what, he's a gunner, that's what he is, go out and get somebody else. I would understand that. Timothy Menace comes back and says, Paul, Joe has made a trade in every offseason since becoming GM outside of quarterback. Who can you see them targeting? Also, have you had your interview for running backs? Okay. Number one, Joel Thomas, the Giants running back coach, has left. Okay, that's number one. So they need to do something there. And again, I don't think that slipped by me. I don't think they've hired somebody. In terms of outside of quarterback, a trade. Timothy, I don't think there's another trade to be made outside of the quarterback situation. See, because here's the thing. What do the Giants need most? I refer you back, and we got about 10 minutes left in the program. I see we got over 600 people live on the show. Appreciate you guys for joining in. You can do a phone call, a video call, or go to the chat. We're here to talk Giants with you. John Mara himself said, got to get the quarterback via draft, trade, or free agency. Okay, fine, we get that. Got to improve the defense because teams went up and down with their offense on this defense. Okay, so got to do that. And defensive tackle is by far the deepest position in this draft. You're probably going to be able to go into the fourth round even and get guys who have make it grades. It's a terrific defensive tackle draft. Terrific. So you might even wind up with two of them out of this draft if you really want them. So I think that's someplace you can go if you don't want to spend money. If you're going to spend money on a free agent, I'm a big fan of Milton Williams, who, when he came out of school, I was hoping the Giants would be able to snag him up. And the Eagles got him. And after a quiet beginning to his career, he really played well this past season. And obviously you saw what he did in the Super Bowl and in the postseason run for Philly. I don't think they can re-sign him. It's going to take some money. So let's just say, if they're not going to go for the money at defensive tackle, I don't blame them because there are so many defensive tackles in the draft. So that you're going to go drafting for. Quarterback, I think you go the trade route for, or the free agent route. And then you supplement it by taking a young quarterback to be a prospect. And then the other thing that John Mara said, he wanted to see offensive line depth. He specifically said offensive line depth. So that's kind of why I don't see them signing somebody like Aaron Banks, who we talked about earlier. Because I think if you sign Aaron Banks, you're giving him some pretty good money and you're bringing him in as a starter. He's not necessarily a depth piece. If you're looking for offensive line depth, chances are you're probably going to draft it in the middle rounds. That's where offensive line depth comes from. offensive line starters come either early in the draft or through free agency. And those are hard to come by because teams usually keep their best offensive linemen. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. So to be honest with you, Timothy, I'm of the opinion that quarterback is really the best place for the Giants to make a splash. If they're going to make a trade, I think it's going to be for a quarterback. As we now know, there could be a very high-profile quarterback on the trade market. Isaac Moore says Keenan Allen, Godwin, or Mike Williams. Yeah, I get you. I get it. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, absolutely. Got a lot of length. Been in the league a long time. Done some really good things. Those are the kinds of guys I would want, one of those kinds of guys in the room. Yes. And he does say Mike Williams would be a cheaper option. That is true. Now, Williams has had trouble. He's bounced around now. I think he's been on 3 teams in the last 16 months or 24 months, hasn't he? I mean, he's getting long in the tooth. Teray Jackson says, Paul, what do you think the Giants will do at 3? Not what you would do, but what do you think they would do? Teray, here's the thing. I try to explain this on the show very, very often. I think it's foolish for any meatball out there to say they know what the Giants are going to do or they think what the Giants are going to do. You know why? Because teams put millions and millions of dollars and infinite amounts of manpower hours, blood, sweat, tears, and work and research into their scouting department to put their war room together, if you will, their draft room, if you prefer. I don't want to insult any military out there because I have great respect for the military. So if you'd rather not use war room for drafting, call it the draft room, I'm okay with that, although war room has been a name we've used in the NFL for many, many years. I have too much respect for those guys to say, I know what they're going to do. People love to put out rumors in the paper or on the airwaves and say they've got the leak. They know what the Giants are thinking. They know what Team X is thinking. They know what Team X is going to do. They don't. They don't. There's too much at stake for a team to let any of that aroma come out of that room. So, Teray, my feeling is I'd rather be honest with the public and tell you guys, based on my knowledge, my experience, hey, given the Giants situation as I see it logically, this is what I would do. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not in the prediction business. And I'm certainly not in the business of pretending to be a scout or a personnel guy or a GM guy. I have too much respect for those guys to do that. That's the position that I take. Okay? I'd rather be upfront and be honest with you folks than to hide behind some clickbait or just say something because it's the fad of the day. Oh, the Giants are going to do this because everybody else says it. No, I'm not going to do that. I've made it very clear my, 4 or 5 pronged plan for how I would attack the Giants situation if I were the GM in their set of circumstances. I've made that very clear. And I've gone through a number of different options, including drafting a quarterback high, not drafting a quarterback high. I'm firm on getting the bridge. You guys know the quality of bridge I'm talking about. You know about my feelings about potentially trying to make a deal from 3 to go down to 6 and then stock up high premium draft picks for 2026 so that I could use them if necessary to move up into the 2026 draft. I can explain to you all the reasons why I believe, logically, these are the scenarios that make sense to me. I just finished my 42nd consecutive year of covering the New York Giants in the National Football League. So I'm going to go by tried and true methods of logic and reason that I've gained through experience, through knowledge, through talking to football people that I've come to trust over 4 decades of doing this job. And that's the only way that I know how to do this job with integrity. Now, here's Isaac doing exactly what I won't do. I hear rumblings, he says, in New York that they like Jackson Dart, maybe. Isaac, that is exactly what I will not do. Do I like Jackson Dart? I do think he's a legit prospect. And could I see him potentially in the second round as somebody you could logically pick for them? I could. I don't know how they feel. I've said this before. He's from Ole Miss. I guarantee you, beyond any research that this team, the Giants, have done on Jackson Dart, they've also got somebody who knows him through another pipeline in Eli Manning. The connection with Ole Miss, the connection with the Manning family. I believe he was also part of the Manning camp, the passing academy. So they have an extra resource in addition to everything else that they put into it. They've got an extra resource, a firsthand personal resource. And if everything that they see says thumbs up, then Dart's a guy they're going to try to get. And at the same time, with the firsthand and amount of information they no doubt have on Jackson Dart, if they're not comfortable with that information, it's going to be thumbs down. I don't know how they feel about him. Nobody does. But I would make a case based on rudimentary knowledge and logic. I would make a case for Jackson Dart in the second or third round. Absolutely, I would. Teray Jackson says he appreciates the answer and information, and you're the best. Well, I appreciate that, Teray. I just try to be honest with you folks. So many people, especially in my business, they have opinions. They throw mud against the wall. They smoke you. They'll BS you. And they'll give you all kinds of stuff that, in all honesty, they really don't know. But they need to pretend that they know. As somebody who's in the building all the time, because I do shows as part of the Giants official broadcast team, I'm telling you, this kinds of stuff doesn't get out of that room upstairs, the draft room. And I'm very, very willing to tell you that I don't get in that room. Okay? Nor do any of the other media. They don't get in that room either. Contrary to what they may want you to believe. All right. Isaac Moore says, if they sign a free agent veteran quarterback, it will tell the other teams they most likely draft a quarterback early. Isaac, I've been saying this for a while. The contract and the deal and the resources that the Giants put in to the veteran quarterback next month, okay, in March. Remember, the window to get a verbal deal with teams starts on March 10th. The 12th is when you can actually solidify the deal. But the opening period for free agent discussions begins March 10th. Okay? That week is going to be insane. You will know, based on the kind of deal that the Giants work out with the veteran quarterback that they acquire that week, you'll know right away. Are they looking for a guy who's going to potentially be able to play as a rookie or potentially be able to play in 26? Or if they're thinking, no, it's 26 or 27. You'll know. It's really that simple. The terms of the deal of the veteran quarterback they get is going to provide an awful lot of breadcrumbs. Plus, quite frankly, the status of that player. Again, if you're signing a Justin Fields, you're looking, he's not, if a Justin Fields goes free agent, he's going to sign with a place where they've said to him, we think you're the future. We think you're going to be here for 4, 5, 6 years, and you're going to be our guy. That's what Justin Fields wants to hear. I would find it hard to believe a team is going to make him that kind of commitment. I don't think his resume warrants that. I don't. But that's what he's going to want to hear. He's going to want to hear he's at least going to be committed for 3 years as the starter, maybe a 4th. I'm sure of it. That's what he's going to look for. So if you sign a player like that, well, that pretty much tells everybody about how you're going to approach the young quarterbacks in the draft. Just does. If you sign a Sam Darnold, which again, he may wind up getting tagged by the Vikings, but if you sign a Sam Darnold, what are you doing? You're telling everybody Sam Darnold is going to be the starting quarterback for the next 4 or 5 years. So you're not putting a high premium on taking a first-round quarterback in this draft. You're not doing it. Now, if you sign a Bridge, again, how much time do you think that Bridge has? You look at the contract, you look at the possible trade collateral, and that's going to give you an idea of how much of a commitment they want to give to that veteran. That's what that's going to tell you. And if you see a very heavy commitment, then the chances are better that the team is looking for a 2nd or 3rd round quarterback. If you see a very weak commitment or a lesser commitment to a quarterback who is older, then there's a better possibility that they're still looking at the 1st round. The footprints are going to be in the snow, folks. Isaac Morris says, Paul, do you think Schoen and Dabble want to draft a quarterback early, knowing that they need to win now mode to save their hides? Isaac, that's not why you take a rookie quarterback number 3. Chances are, history tells us in the National Football League that rookie quarterbacks rarely win a lot of games. So let's just put the mathematics on the table for you. John Mara, the co-owner, has said he needs to feel better about the team next January than he did this January. This January, they finished the season with 3 wins. How many wins is it going to take? We don't know. John Mara won't tell you how many wins it will take. He doesn't even have a number in his mind. He knows, though, that the team has to be much, much more competitive. So I think a reasonable person would say, if the Giants are going to be a lot more competitive in 2025, and just follow the dots here, you got to believe they're going to win at least double. I mean, it's hard to imagine, right, that they're not going to win at least 6, 7, 8 games. I mean, if you win 6, 7, or 8 games, that you're clearly a lot more competitive, right? By definition. Just think about this. Well, how are you going to win that many games with the schedule that the Giants are going to face in 2025? Have you looked at the schedule? It's rather daunting. We all know year by year, things happen. Rosters change, coaches change. We also know that injuries have a great impact on when you play a team. Do you play them when they're injured? Do you play them when they're not? Or when you're injured or you're not? And that has a great impact on your record as well. But I think it's fair to say, if the Giants win 6, 7, or 8 games, that means, by definition, they were much better and much more competitive than they were in 2024, right? We're just using common sense here. Well, look at the quarterbacks in this draft. There's no Drake May. There's no Bo Nix. There's no Jaden Daniels. So you tell me, taking any one of the quarterbacks in this draft at number 3 and throwing them into the starting lineup, what are the chances that you're going to get 6, 7, or 8 wins? Probably not very good. So if you're going to play the percentages, what you're going to do, Isaac, is you're going to get yourself a veteran quarterback who has not only experience, but winning experience, so that you have a reasonable chance to win enough games to prove to people that your team is better, that your team is more competitive. If you throw a 3rd overall pick rookie into the lineup and wind up going 2-15 or 3-14, which is not unheard of, you would have to believe there's going to be a lot of very, 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 very unhappy people. And it would not bode well for a lot of people. You would have to believe. That's logical. So, to be frank, your statement is exactly in the reverse. What you would probably want to look for in this situation is, who's the guy they're going to get in March? Who's the veteran who's going to make them instantly more competitive and more credible? That's the bigger question. Because if you're relying on the number 3 overall pick to play quarterback and to make your team significantly better in 2025, you are very likely to be barking up the wrong tree. That's highly unlikely. Isaac says, I hear Chris Snee is an advisor. No, he's a scout. He was signed officially to be a Giants scout in 2024 and still remains that way this year. The New York Giants says, Paul, what if the Giants bring Stafford, trade out of 3 to 6 with the Raiders, and draft Ted McMillan? hit on a few old linemen, and this offense may be onto something. Well, you know what? Again, if Stafford becomes available via trade, he would be extremely attractive to any team in the Giants situation. Now, at that point, at 3, you've got to decide. Can you get the Raiders to bite? And I'm saying, assuming Travis Hunter is not there. Because if Travis Hunter's there, I would take him unless the Raiders are going to bowl me over with a Godfather offer. You know what that is? It's an offer you can't refuse. For me, an offer that I can't refuse is a first rounder and a second rounder in 2026. So if I get the offer that I can't refuse, I move down to 6. And does Ted McMillan become a possibility for me? Yeah. Yes, he does. He absolutely does. Skyscraper, great length, speed, big play guy. Absolutely he does. And then you say hit on a few old linemen. You're going to have to take at least one offensive lineman somewhere in this draft and at least one, if not 2, defensive linemen somewhere in this draft. So I'm not at odds with what you posted right there. I could absolutely see that as being a positive path and a logical path to the Giants being on the upswing. So thank you so much for the comment. Sean Jackson, good evening. How are you? He's one of our regulars. Since the Giants unfortunately have so many holes, should they prioritize one primary area to strengthen? O-line, D-line, for example, or should they move all over to fix holes? Sean, this team has to show improvement in 2025. So I appreciate, you don't just mortgage everything for this year, which is why I don't believe you give up the farm in draft picks. I'm certainly against trading up to 1 or 2 to get a rookie QB. I'm absolutely against that because you're going to have to give up a 1 and a 2 and God knows what else. I'm not about doing that. And that's what a lot of people probably would like you to do. There are people out there who insist that somewhere in the top 3 picks, whether it's at number 3 or the Giants move up to 2 or up to 1, they have to draft a quarterback there. There's a bunch of folks out there who I know believe that with all their heart. And that's fine. You're allowed to have that opinion. I don't happen to have that opinion, and I would not do that. If the Giants feel that way, slam your fist on the table that we're all in, we absolutely believe one of these QBs is the guy, then they are responsible to make that selection and should take one of those quarterbacks there. They've got the research. That's what they're paid to do, to take the best pick for the team. Doesn't matter what I say. They've got to own up to what they do. They've got to be accountable to the pick. So that's all that really matters. Now, we've discussed the 3 areas the Giants need to improve. They need a quarterback. They need defensive line. They could use depth on the offensive line, and they could certainly use a corner, and they could certainly use another wide receiver, and maybe even a running back for good measure. But again, that's a little bit lesser on the list of priorities. Heck, if Jason Pinnock leaves, the Giants are going to need to have another starting safety, unless they believe that Dane Belton can start and play next to Tyler Nubin. But I'd like to think that they'll be able to bring back Jason Pinnock. But if they can't, that is another hole that's got to have to be filled. Because even if Belton is able to win a starting job, who's your third safety? And we know that in today's game, defensive coordinators like the opportunity and the option to play a 3-safety package. Okay. So I don't know that, fix all the holes. Sean, here's the problem. The Giants do have work to do here. It's just not that simple. They do have work to do. So no, I would not necessarily say they need to just force feed one particular area. They do have to kind of spread it around a little bit. I guess really that's the answer that you were looking for. Isaac Moore says, what if Cam Ward is there at 3? So what are you telling me? That Hunter is gone and Carter is gone? See, the other problem with that question is, who's the quarterback? Who's the quarterback they're getting in March? Remember what I told you, Isaac? The quarterback the Giants get in March is going to give you breadcrumbs about what they're going to do in April. So I don't care if Cam Ward is there at 3 or not. That doesn't do enough for me. I need to know more context, and the scenario needs to be painted out a lot more clearly than that. But I will tell you this, I don't think either of these quarterbacks is the third best overall player in this draft. For example, right off the bat, Hunter, Carter, and Mason Graham. In my opinion, those 3 defensive players are better than any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And I'll be honest with you, McMillan is very enticing too. In terms of offense, he's extremely enticing. Isaac also wants to know, you think Turbo Miller will get a chance in the backfield? That's a good question. It's a very good question. I like him. He is young. He is green. He is raw. What we saw last year is that he's got some ability. I could see it at practice. No question about that. He needs to show more patience, and more experience will give you this. Again, he hasn't been involved in real NFL action. So what he's going to have to learn through maturity is more patience when he carries the ball and be able to see things and be able to cut and weave. He's got tremendous straight ahead speed. And if there's a hole and you can shoot him through it like a cannon, he's a dangerous weapon. But what if the hole is not there? What if the hole is not blocked the way it's supposed to be, and now he has to hesitate and make an adjustment and then angle through and then make a cut and go? This is the kind of stuff he's going to have to develop if he's going to get into the backfield rotation. Right now, Turbo Miller is a guy where you hand him the ball, you push the button, like the Roadrunner. He's straight ahead, speeds right through like a bolt of lightning. If he can add more of a repertoire to his game, I think he's got something to bring to the table. I'm a fan. I like him. I'd like to see him further develop, though, in his second professional season. Deila NYG comes back and says, I just worry about the Pats taking McMillan at 4 if they don't bring in either Godwin or Higgins. Higgins will be franchise tags for the second year in a row from what I've heard. Yes, Higgins and his family have already said that the Bengals told him he is going to be tagged for the second year in a row. So that's not going to be there. Now, here's what I'll tell you, though, about the Patriots. The Patriots desperately need offensive line help. Now, do they need a receiver? Absolutely. Desperate for a receiver, too. But if they're smart, they'll build in the trenches. So the question becomes, how high on their grading sheet do they see the two premier tackles in this draft? Whether it's Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks Jr., the two premier tackles in this draft. Is it possible? Is it possible? Because I think Campbell, on most people's estimation, is higher than Banks. Is he high enough to be picked in the top 5? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But now, in combination of grade and need, if the Patriots are going to put need and give that a significant part of the equation, is it possible? Could you see them take a Will Campbell at 4? Well, I don't think they're going to pass on a Hunter or a Carter if either one of those guys are there. I don't see how anybody could pass on one of those two guys if they're sitting there and if they're not going to take a quarterback. And obviously, they've got Drake May. They're not taking a quarterback. So that's what I think about that. Also, coming right back saying, been listening to you talk Giants football for a long time now. Yeah, it has been a long time. 4+ decades, as a matter of fact. I hope you've got some ibuprofens if you've been listening to me for that long, because I tend to get very excited, energized when I talk Giants football, and it can give people a headache for sure. All right, let's finish up here the last few minutes. I'm not getting any audio calls or video calls, so we're going to finish up here the last few minutes with just these posts and finish up. Sean Jackson says, Paul, I think Joe Schoen may have at least one or two big moves up his sleeve during free agency, the draft, or both. I don't think he's going down without a real fight to keep his job. I absolutely believe he's got a big splash coming up in March. I suspect that's going to be for the quarterback. But again, I don't predict what they're going to do. My gut feeling is that a big splash for a quarterback makes tremendous sense. It makes an awful lot of logic. And it's certainly something that I would do. So, yeah, I think your statement makes a lot of sense. It's very reasonable. And I've been saying this now for a couple of months. John Nichols says, do you think the Giants should trade back and get more picks? I think if the Giants can trade the 3 to the Raiders at 6 and get their first and second next year, that gives them 2 extra premium picks in the 2026 draft that they could potentially use if they need to trade and move up in the 2026 draft for a specific player that they might want to get, including a rookie quarterback. See, that's the hedge, John. The hedge here to play both hands of the deck. You know, if you go to Atlantic City and you get 2 face cards, you split them and you play 2 hands of 21. The way the Giants can split their deck if they want to, go to the Raiders at 6, get the ransom, premium picks in next year's draft, and now you're still going to get a dynamite player at 6, okay? You really should. Blue chip player at 6 should not be hard, all right? And then on top of that, you're talking about the possibility of adding premium picks next year to set yourself up to have an even more spectacular draft in 2026. It's a hedge. But again, if I'm not getting the premium value, I'm staying at 3, and I'm going to try to get my hands on either Hunter or Carter I think Mason Graham could probably have a chance to last till 6. I certainly hope he does, because if I'm going to make this trade, that's the guy I want to get. Mason Graham next to Dexter Lawrence. Oh, man, what a duo that would be. Isaac Moore says, what are your thoughts on Neal and Kayvon? I'm thinking that this needs to be a breakout year for both of them. Evan Neal showed at the end of last season that his arrow's starting to point up again, and I hope that continues with an off season of health and work and training and improvement. Kayvon Thibodeau, coming off the broken wrist, cost him a month of the season. Wasn't quite the same when he came back. Started playing better, but didn't really break out after having an 11 and a half sack season the year before. This is season 4 now. I think they'll pick up his 5th-year option. At least I would. Okay? I would. But man, he needs to really have a breakout season. Teray Jackson says, let's say Raiders jump you and take a quarterback and Hunter is gone. What will your plan be? Well, is Carter still there? Maybe not. Then I'm taking Mason Graham. Isaac Moore says, do you think Rodgers gets signed anywhere or is he cooked? I'm not a big proponent of Aaron Rodgers for a number of reasons, including the fact that I do think his gas tank is running very short. But I do think someone will want to take a chance on him. Unless, philosophically they've got problems meshing with him, which is always a possibility. Sean Jackson finally says, is at least 2 more divisional wins, competitive divisional games, and a true Giants identity enough to show Mara the progress he wants during the 2025 season? Sean, John Mara will not specify to us what the parameters are to make him feel better in January. All we know is that the team must show improvement and more competitiveness. And chances are it can't be incremental. It's going to have to be more than that. And I think every fan out there feels the same way. You want to see the Giants take a big step forward. You don't want them to shuffle along an inch at a time. You'd like to see them take a bigger full step forward in 2025. That's the best answer I can give you. Isaac Moore says, what if it's between Graham or McMillan? Wow. At that point, I'd probably take Graham. And that's hard. That's really hard. But I probably would take Graham. Mason Graham is, oh man, I can't tell you how much I love that player. And I know defensive tackle is so deep in this draft. You can get one in the 2nd or 3rd round, and probably even in the 4th. I just think Mason Graham is so special. And I know McMillan fits exactly what I love in a wide receiver. Length, height, size, speed, ability to produce. Both of these guys are picture perfect for the positions that they play. McMillan is a perfect receiver, a skyscraping receiver. Graham is a perfect 3-technique defensive tackle. I would probably take Graham, Isaac. I would probably take Graham. That's an awfully difficult one for me, though. Timothy Menace comes back, says, Paul, what Joe draft picks can you see them extending this offseason? Well, I think they're going to... If it were me, it makes the most sense to pick up the 5th-year option on Kayvon Thibodeau. So I think they probably will, because I think they're going to be very logical about it. Other than that, they might just wait and see and let things kind of play out a little bit. I think that's the most obvious one, right? The most obvious one is Kayvon. I mean, I don't think they'll pick up Neal's. I think Evan Neal's going to have to play it out and see how it goes. Isaac Moore says, is Kafka staying and will Dable give up play calling? Well, yes, absolutely. Mike Kafka is staying as far as I know as we speak tonight. And we're extending a little past 2 hours here, but I'm just going to finish up. Yes, Kafka is staying as far as we know. Will Dable give up play calling? He has not made that decision. However, he apparently told John Mara that that would be under consideration. And John Mara has said that himself, as has Brian Dable. They've both alluded to that conversation. So I do think it's possible. For sure, it's possible. I don't know what is going to go into Dable's computations to make that happen. He has not revealed that, nor should he. But I'm sure as the training camp grows closer, we'll be asking that more and more, and he's not going to tell anybody, and then we'll all have to figure it out for ourselves. Corey says, I have no idea what to look forward to as a fan of the New York Football Giants. It feels like the team is stuck in purgatory in this division. Corey, here's what I'll say. We know how strong the Eagles are, and I know they've got to have a change in offensive coordinator now because Kellen Moore took the Saints head coaching job. So we'll see. The coaching changes at coordinators were a big deal and really hurt that team in 2023. But then they drafted really well, and then they hired Fangio and Moore on the defensive and offensive sides of the ball this past season. And those two hirings were as big an impact as any draft picks. Yeah, I know they drafted the two corners, and they were terrific, and they fell into their laps. On a silver platter, the NFL said, here's two quality starting corners in their rookie seasons, Eagles. Enjoy. I get it. They really lucked into those two guys. No question about it. But having said that, the coordinator changes really, really helped them tremendously. So let's see what happens with the offensive coordinator spot now that Kellen Moore went to the Saints. But that's a team that certainly is going to be in the mix in 2025. Washington, I'm not sure. Jaden Daniels had a heck of a rookie season. Tip your cap to him. Let's see him do it a second time. I would not be 100% sold on Washington being as strong as they were this year. They may have to take a step back. Teams now have film on him for a year or two. Okay, let's not forget that. And Washington, a lot of people seem to think they're going to make a play for a big-time wide receiver. And that would certainly make their offense potentially more dangerous as long as the quarterback doesn't take a step back. Let's see. Okay? Dallas is a mess. Their salary cap situation is an absolute mess. I'm sure they're going to redo Dak Prescott, renegotiate it, and juggle more money and put more on the credit card and push more back into later years. But Dallas needs an awful lot, and they are in cap hell. So is there room for the Giants to move up at least one spot this season? Absolutely there is. How much more competitive they're going to be, that remains to be seen. Getting a true winner of a quarterback in here who's going to be able to do something in 2025 is the first step that they need to make. Isaac Moore says Pinnock gone, right? Well, I don't think so. I think there's a good chance that he resigns here. At least I hope so. Again, he's certainly in the top half of safeties in the league. And he's been very durable, very reliable. George Lewis says, you hear anything about who can become the part owner? And Isaac says, Money Mayweather. And George Lewis has a big laugh at that. I get it. No, fellas. I don't know. I think that's very premature. I really do. And no, I don't know. I don't know. I think that's just really really early to tell. But it's not going to really have impact anyway, because it's going to be a financial partnership that's not going to impact the operation of the franchise. And usually it takes a good year for any of those things to take root anyway, because you're also going to have to get voting approval from the league for anybody that's going to come in. I wouldn't really worry about that too much. It's a non-story. I know it's kind of a fun story to kick around at the water cooler, but it's really a non-story. Terry Jackson says, what if they get Kirk Cousins in free agency? Then what quarterback in the draft will they look at? Well, what are the Falcons going to do with Cousins? They're going to trade him? They're going to cut him? They're going to keep him? That's another guy who could be on the market and would be on that shelf of higher level guys like Stafford, like Wilson. All of a sudden, you'd have to put Cousins on that shelf too. I don't disagree with you. I personally think they're better off. Any team who needs a bridge quarterback is better off going to Stafford. I think he, to me, is the best of those three names, if available. Now, if Cousins gets cut and you sign him, there's offset language which is going to allow you to get him a lot cheaper. The question becomes with Kirk Cousins is, how do you feel about the last third of his season last year when he really fell off? Phil Simms has said he believes that Cousins' mechanics coming off of the Achilles may have been part of the reason why it looked like he had a dead arm at the end of last season. Is that something you're willing to gamble on? That his leg will be stronger, his mechanics will get cleaned up, and he'll be able to perform at a high level? Are you willing to gamble on that if you're Team X? It's kind of risky, but you certainly will be able to get him at a bargain basement price because of the offset language in his contract with Atlanta. They're going to have to pay the bulk of his salary, even if you sign him as a free agent. So there is a enticing reason to want to consider a Kirk Cousins. Again, signs of the dead arm at the end of last year, though, that's going to make you wince a little bit. RoseTap87 says, what players do you not want our division rivals not draft? Not to draft. I see that later on you have here. You corrected that and said two. All right. Well, let's see. I have not taken a look, to be honest with you. Let me do this now. Where are... We know Philly 32. Where did Dallas and Washington pick? Dallas picks 12. Okay. And Washington picks 29. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Washington badly needs a great receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin. So, I would think that at 29, they probably will have their eyes on a couple of receivers late in the first round, and they probably will get themselves one. Hopefully they will get the wrong one if you're not a Washington fan. Dallas at 12. Let me see. Are they talking? Has there been anything out of Dallas? And I don't think so. I don't think so. That there's been anything coming out of Dallas that indicates what they're going to do with Odigizua. Odigizua is going to, in all likelihood, I don't think they're going to pay him to come back. He's not going to get the tag. We know that. It's too expensive. And they probably won't be able to afford to bring him back. And they got cap problems. Now, we know they're desperate for a running back. They absolutely are going to need defensive line. And again, it's a very deep draft in defensive tackles. So they're probably going to be able to get one there. If they want to, they could get a wide receiver there too. I would think they probably go defensive line at 12. That's what I would think. Do they go for an edge rusher? Knowing that Parsons, that whole contract thing is going to get messy on them. I think probably they go defensive line at 12. That's what I would think. So, again, hopefully, if you're not a Dallas fan, they picked the wrong guy there. All right. Boy, we are going a lot longer than I thought we were going to go because our numbers kept going up on the viewers. The viewers kept going up and up and up and up. And so, you know what? We decided that with the numbers going as high as they're going, we will keep on. We've got well over 700 people watching the program live right now. So I guess we'll try to take this thing to the bottom of the hour if there are enough of questions and comments that we can get to. All right, let's see. We have Isaac Moore says Stroud took a step back second year. Yes, he did. And I'm sorry. You know, Washington can dance all they want and have a great party for the fact that their rookie quarterback had a terrific season. No one's taken that away from him. Now, the big challenge is, and the big mountain in front of the Commanders is, can he do it in year 2? That's a legitimate question. And I still believe his durability over the long term, I'm concerned about him. I'm not getting off of that. I'm not getting off of that. And it's one of the reasons why I was not very high on Jaden Daniels coming into the draft. It wasn't so much about his ability. He had a lot of skills to offer. There's never been a doubt about that. But he loves to run and run recklessly. And he is not the most solidly built frame of a quarterback that you're going to find. And I can tell you this. I'm telling you flat out. I've had people on the Commander's staff say to me during last season, the way he continued to run, they were like, we're not sure he's going to make it till the end of the year in the lineup. They were concerned about his durability last year as a rookie. Now, he's going to get bigger and stronger and more mature and fill out. Hopefully for his sake. He has a great off-season strength and conditioning program with the Commanders to work with them. He eats right, he trains right, and he'll be more durable. But I do think right now he's a durability risk, especially the way he runs. He's a reckless runner. And that's, we saw what happened to RG3. And that was, that set that franchise back quite a ways. Aiden Fink says the Commanders might just be the 2021 Bengals. You can always hope, right, Aiden? No. Oh, my. Delia NYG says, me personally, I would take McMillan over Graham. That's a tough call. It really is. But oh, man, go back and watch some of Mason Graham's tape before you go there and make that selection, because it's just going to blow your mind. The dude is just, his motor runs extra, extra hot. He plays with leverage. He plays with power. He plays with balance. Relentless. Knows how to split double teams. Knows how to beat one-on-ones. He's something else. Anyway, simply because there will be a young quarterback here at some point, so says Delia NYG, over the next 2 years, this offense has to have something to work with once he's brought in. You know, though, it's not a bad receivers draft. And I have to tell you something. There's a bunch of them that are 6 feet, over 6. Look, Trey Harris, 6'2". The kid from Stanford, Io Manor, or Io Manor. I don't know how he pronounces his name. I'm going to have to learn that before I get to the combine. 6'2". Jaden Higgins is 6'4". Jack Beach, Besh from TCU. We saw him in the Senior Bowl, 6'1". Savion Williams, TCU, 6'4". I mean, man, there's a bunch of somewhat taller receivers in this draft. Not like McMillan, I grant you. He's special. McMillan is special. Blue chip. Absolute blue chip. No question. Rose Tap 87 says, what about the kicking situation? How can we fix it? Well, Gano got hurt. And then the place kicking situation got all discombobulated. He's healthy. In fact, let me go back and take a look at this. I want to quote you something because I don't want to just say it out off the cuff. Graham Gano, when he came back last year, let's see this. And I know he's making a decent buck. So salary cap wise, I don't know if they're going to want to adjust something with him. But he came back, and in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games of the season, okay? In the last 8 games of the season, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, he was 7 for 9 on field goals. I mean, you know, I'm not gonna go nuts over that. Kicked under some rough conditions, but 7 for 9. I don't know. Giants could look at him. He does have a high salary cap number. Let me just check that. Let me check that out. It is a big number. I know that. Graham Gano's salary cap number is over $5.5 million this year. It is a pretty beefy salary cap number. But if they're convinced that he's healthy, here's what we know. A reliable kicker like him doesn't get noticed until you don't have him. And once you don't have him, all hell breaks loose. So, would it shock me if the Giants tried to trim him a little bit? It wouldn't. And then you have to see, right? Then you have to see. What's his response going to be to that? It wouldn't shock me if they asked him for a few bucks to try to trim a little bit or redo his deal. That wouldn't shock me. But in terms of quality of kicker, as long as he's healthy, Graham Gano is a very high-quality kicker and incredibly reliable. Aiden Fink says, Bo Nix is the quarterback taking a step back in year 2, in my opinion. I'm inclined not to think that, Aiden. You know I'm a huge Bo Nix fan, always have been. I think him and Sean Payton are a perfect match, and I have tremendous faith not only in Bo Nix, but in Sean Payton. And the combination of those two guys, I feel like he's going to play well. Isaac Moore says, I hear Cousins has a noodle arm. Now, that's not fair. Again, Phil Simms thinks his mechanics may have been altered, and that's part of what you saw at the end of the season. And the Ela NYG says Cousins in his last start with the Vikings didn't throw a ball, meaning the Falcons. I get it. I see you fixed it. Throw a ball over 34 miles an hour. Something's definitely wrong with him. Folks, I'm telling you what Phil Simms told me. Phil Simms said because of the Achilles injury he had the year before, There's a possibility that his mechanics got messed up, and that's why you saw what appeared to be a dead arm. You got to check into that. The medical folks are going to have to deal with that. If you're going to make any deal with Cousins, you're going to want your medic guys to get involved. 5 minutes to go. Sean Jackson says, Paul, if you had your choice, what would you prefer the Giants' identity to be? An upcoming tough young team, a physical and fast team, an explosive team, etc. I think their identity right now is a tough-minded young team. And so if they are to get better this year, then an up-and-coming tough young team would actually fit that description very, very well. The Ilya NYG says some people think Dallas is taking Ashton Gentry. Yeah, the running back. By far the best running back in this draft. Here's the problem. There are a ton of good running backs in this draft. Now, he separates himself from the rest, right? He is the most blue chip of all the running backs. Then there's a gap, and then there's a whole slew of other guys. And they're all good. I mean, they're saying that this year's running backs crop is actually better, deeper than last year's. And the Giants got Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round. Think about that. So, again, I know they need one. It would not shock me if they took him. It would also not shock me if they took a stud defensive lineman there. Rostap 87, you think we can use Wandale as a third down running back? He has the experience. No, that won't happen. He will still take some end arounds and handoffs and wide receiver sweeps, but he's not going to wind up being a third down running back. That will not happen. George Lewis says, Paul, I think the Giants are going to do the same thing the Bills did when they were bad. Remember the Bills fans wanted Brandon. The Bills fans wants Brandon headed because they were bad, but Brandon that year went crazy in the offseason. Oh, I guess he means Bean, the GM. They wanted him beheaded because they were bad, but then he went crazy in the offseason. Well, again, we've said many times, Joe Schoen learned from Bean. So there's a lot of those philosophies about how to build the Bills from the bottom up that the Giants were going to employ. We all figure that. Yeah, George continues, traded for Josh Allen, added to the defense. Well, they didn't trade for Josh Allen. I mean, I believe they moved up in the draft to get the pick. So, yes, I suppose you could say that. I think Joe might do the same thing this offseason to save his job like Brandon Bean did that year. The Focus, hey, coming back. We've had you on the program before. Brady, Foles, Russell Wilson, Brad Johnson, Warner, Steve Young, blah, 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 blah. And I think stuff. None are top picks, but all Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, which is the goal. Yeah, well, the Focus, you know, I've had the stats. I've quoted them before in this program. I'm not bashful about it. I'll give it to you one more time. Okay? I'll give it to you one more time. Since the 2000 season, okay, that's 24 years of Super Bowls. There have been 28 different starting quarterbacks in a Super Bowl. Okay? Only 6 of them were number 1 picks overall. Only 8 of the 28 were top 3 picks overall. 11 of the 28 were top 10 picks overall. And furthermore, only 15 of the last 28 different starting quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, only 15 of 28 were actually first-round picks. So that's 54%. And I've been very vocal about, I don't believe you have to have. It is not a prerequisite to have a high first-round pick quarterback to get to the Super Bowl. That's obvious. The numbers are clear. You don't have to. Does it help? Well, if you've got a good team, sure it helps. But if you have a good team, that quarterback could also be along for the ride. And doesn't necessarily have to be a top 3 pick, a top 10 pick. It doesn't have to be. Focus says, I think Young could have been drafted high, but he chose another league. Steve Young, of course. Yes, we know Steve Young went to the LA Express of the USFL. Was in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and was horrific. And then landed with the San Francisco 49ers. And after Leonard Marshall flattened Joe Montana, Steve Young became the Niners' new quarterback. Daila NYG says, I believe that with Cousins, the lingering injury could have definitely impacted his drive on the football. Isaac Moore says, we lost a lot of close games due to boneheaded mistakes and gaffes. I'm not going to dispute that at all. Daily NYG says, oh yeah, there's 10 to 15 running backs that have some real potential in this draft. It's really deep. Defense, tight end, and running back are the strengths of this class. Wide receiver not nearly as strong as years past. Wide receiver doesn't have a lot of top people necessarily, but there's some playable, make it guys later on, and taller receivers. But you're right, in terms of higher class receivers, fewer of those. Absolutely. Rose-Tap 87, what do you think of adding free agent Stephon Diggs to pair up with Neighbors? I think it's a very intriguing opportunity as a pending free agent. He is coming off of an ACL. First thing you got to do is check with your medical staff before you do anything else. And finally, Rose-Tap 87 says, what about giving Taysom Hill a chance to quarterback our team? No, I don't think that's in the cards for a variety of reasons. All right, folks, guess what? We wound up doing 2.5 hours with you again. You demanded it. We kept getting people on the chat. We kept getting people live on the viewer channel watching us. And with all of those live views, you know what? We just had to keep going. We just had to keep going. So with well over 700 people currently watching this program tonight, we bid you adieu. The Big Blue Breakdown live program will be back again. We plan on coming back Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, live from the Combine in Indianapolis. So please, please, tell your friends, tell your fellow Giants fans, tell them all. We're going to be out there, going to be a week at the Combine, going to collect a lot of breadcrumbs, and we're going to try to figure out what it is that you guys most want to talk about from Indianapolis. So that'll do it for now here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network. I'm Paul Tatino. This has been the Big Blue Breakdown Live, and we are so glad that you were able to join us tonight. We'll see you again next time, everybody.